Welcome to Rich Planet TV. I'm Richard D. Hall. This week I will be presenting the fourth and final audience discussion show, and the subject on the agenda is the secret space program and UFOs. Joining me for the discussion is the man you can't keep off richplanet.net, the unsung hero of modern-day ufology, possessing a mind of useful information, veteran UFO researcher David Caton. Welcome, David.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Now, 2 weeks ago, we had another one of these releases of government secret files, and I think if you watch my show, you'll be aware of my opinion of them. I believe that they're nothing more than disinformation, because there are no top secret files in these files, and I'm fairly sure there are UFO files which are secret. But you've had a look at them, David, and you wanted to highlight a couple of very significant points in them.
Yes, I've only had a very quick look in the last day or so. Dr. David Clarke, who many people know, has become a sort of fixture now at the PRO at Kew, which is the Public Records Office, and he's sort of coordinated these batches of files that they release every, I don't know, 6 or 9 months. And he's done a sort of resume of what he considers to be the highlight and the most interesting items. So I've just printed that off and looked through them, and there are a few what I would call slight anomalies with facts.
Before you go to the first one, David, I just want to remind everyone about the 1957 Milton Torres case. That wasn't covered in these files, but this is where a US Air Force fighter jet pilot was ordered to shoot down a UFO flying around above Suffolk.
Yeah.
Now, that case is, well, Milton Torres has given a lot of information on that case, but I didn't realise until recently that in August 1956, a US Air Force fighter jet pilot was vectored to go and intercept a UFO.
Well, no, it was a Royal Air Force pilot.
Royal Air Force pilot.
But it was a USAF base in Suffolk called Lakenheath, who had this object on radar, which was obviously confirmed by one of the early warning radar stations called Neatishead, which is in Norfolk. And they scrambled 2 RAF Venom fighters from RAF Waterbeach in Cambridgeshire to intercept, just like the Milton Torres case.
Very similar.
Just a year before. Although I couldn't get any information from the MOD, having filed the Freedom of Information Act on the Torres case, because they said they didn't have any records of that incident, and here we are on this release of documents. It's a 1956 case. So
this is Flight Lieutenant, we think he was, Davis,
yes,
who witnessed and got a lock-on of the UFO.
Yes, he was the pilot of one of the Venoms, yes.
So can you tell us what he said about the dynamics that he viewed on his radar of this UFO?
That's not actually in the report. Well, it might be, but not in the detail I've got here. But he certainly got a radar lock-on, and he took some footage on his, what they call a gun camera. And this was shown actually to a Nick Pope predecessor, a fellow called Ralph Noyes, who was on the UFO desk when it was called DS8, I think. In 1970, he was shown a secret briefing of various UFO footage, including this footage taken by Flight Lieutenant, or it might have been a flying officer, Davies, in 1956, in August 56.
Do you know if that footage has been released, David? Or?
Ooh, I shouldn't think so.
Okay. and apparently this Davis, who was flying the craft and witnessed the UFO, he became the first official MOD spokesperson on UFOs in 1971, I believe.
Yes, he was now at a rank of Air Commodore, which is quite a way up from when he was flying the Venom in 56. And he was the front man on a TV debate for BBC.
It was the Man Alive programme.
Man Alive programme, yes.
1972.
Yeah, 72. So.
But this guy Davis, he witnessed. Apparently, the radar report said that it was in front of him, and then suddenly it was behind him.
Yes, I mean that's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Can you just expand on that, David? What did the radar report say?
Well, he had it in front of him. He was chasing behind the UFO, obviously, at some point, Next thing, it disappears off his cockpit radar, and the air traffic control and the radar people, whether that was Neatishead or Lakenheath, said, "Oh, it's behind you." And he said, "Oh, no, it wasn't." "Oh, yes, it is." You know, the pantomime thing. And in a blink of an eye, the object had gone behind his jet and was trailing behind him.
And we'll see some evidence of that a little bit later on in the interview. Okay, so this guy appears on this TV show, but he seemed to put cold water on previous statements that he'd made in the past.
Yeah.
Once he'd become the government spokesperson.
Yeah. To give him, he was Air Commodore Davies, DFC, DSO, a distinguished Second World War fighter pilot. After he retired, he joined the MOD as a civilian. He died in 1986, and he had 2 personal UFO experiences, one while flying a Spitfire in 1944, and of course the second one in the scrambled RAF Venom fighter in August 1956. Anyway, they obviously had some discussion about the politics of this programme, and despite his previous first-hand experiences of intercepting or seeing 2 UFOs, they came up with this sort of governmental UFO policy in a pre-recorded studio debate. So in other words, it was pre-recorded, so they were making sure what was said was fitted in with what the MOD wanted to say. Now, whether he personally felt this or not, which is a bit strange considering his personal experiences, and it says here, the policy, the MOD policy, as a result of, this is inverted commas, the need felt by many people for a new mythology, and hence their willingness to believe that natural things or events may have mysterious or extraterrestrial origins, close of italics. So in other words, here is this man mouthing these words, the very pilot who chased the UFO. Now, he may have been ordered to say that and make that statement. But
all right, David, well, let's come on to another case in the files which you've got some inside information on, and that's the case in 1990 where these flying triangles were flying around above Belgium, and they were causing all sorts of problems for the Belgian Air Force. They couldn't catch them. They were all over the place. They were now, it says in the UFO files released that this incident remains unresolved. Now, I believe that the Belgian MOD actually enlisted an expert who was a professor in radar technology to examine the airborne radar tapes and to see, you know, what the dynamics of these objects and analyse it. So, Emil Schweitzer, I think it's called.
He's a professor of radar and optronics at Brussels University. So he was co-opted and presumably paid by the Belgian Defence Ministry, which is like our MOD, and their Air Force, the Belgian Air Force. And they wanted to get an independent view on the radar responses of the tracks of this UFO.
Just before you go on there, David, can you tell us what the actual files that they've released say about the Belgian case? Well, there's not a great deal, is there? It doesn't mention this guy, this professor.
No.
It doesn't mention him.
No, I haven't read.
That's not in the files.
The main bulk of this item is just this little paragraph here with the DFE number to read, which is about 5 pages long, which is mainly the account of the events by the Belgian Air Force Colonel Wilfred de Brouwer, a senior official in the Belgian Air Force, and he just says, last remark, it remains unresolved. So in other words, the Belgian Air Force weren't saying it could be this, it could be that. It was unresolved. Now, the MOD have constantly say publicly and to people who write and have written over the years that it is not our remit to investigate UFOs. We just, unless there's some significant, depends significance, I should say is the word they use, we're not interested, we're not funded, we don't have the staff to do it. And then, lo and behold, some 15 months, I believe, after this event, there's an ex-retired solicitor called Harry Harris, who lived in Sale, he still lives in Sale in Manchester, found out that Professor Schweitzer was in the UK, in London, and he found out which hotel he was in, and he agreed to be interviewed on Harry's domestic video recorder.
But he had come over to London,
Yes.
Professor Schweitzer, specifically to speak to the MOD.
Yes. No,
about the Belgian case 15 months earlier.
that's right. Now then, Schweitzer made it quite clear to Harry he didn't want to record on his tape why he was in London. He didn't want it to be publicly known, and we're going back now
1991.
20 years, yeah. That at the public expense, he'd been flown over from Belgium to be debriefed by the MOD, and maybe MOD, Air Force, radar specialists to do whatever. Now, the Belgian Air Force, or their Department of Defence, were keen to have this independent man who specialised in the radar to see if he could fault the radar. This is the airborne radar tapes off 2 F-16s from the Belgian Air Force. He was also asked to interview the 2 pilots, which he did. And basically, he could not fault the radar tapes to be some radar anomaly or Doppler effects they can get, ground reflection effects, birds, all the sort of common radar problems. So he agreed to be interviewed by Harry in London, and what he says and his demeanour and body language and everything is very revealing.
So we're going to have a look at Professor Emil Schweitzer now in the interview. Now it's quite low quality because it's just recorded on a camcorder in, I think, 90 or 91 by Harry Harris.
And it's
so
a copy as well.
We're going to crank up the VHS.
Organize a meeting at the in a big room of the Society in Brussels, and they asked me to be present at that meeting, and I was present at that meeting together with my colleague Professor Acharois, who is a specialist of image processing. That's the first time I heard about UFOs. I didn't believe anything about UFOs beforehand. They asked me to be there because they heard that I am a radar specialist, and they asked my colleague Marc Acharois to be there because they heard he was a very good specialist of image processing. Yeah. So that's the way I got involved, as well as my colleague Marc Acharois.
Yes. Now, have you actually spoken to any of the pilots who had sightings of?
Yes, I have spoken to the pilot and my colleague too, and also Mr. Brennick, Leon Brennick, which is a physicist of the Brussels University, and which is a member of the SOBATS. We spoke all three with the pilot because we gave a conference about the UFO appearances in the eastern part of Belgium, in a small town called Welkenraad, in the at the end of the month January, and the pilot who recorded very carefully the UFO trajectory in the night of 30 March was present.
Well, what year was that? The 19th of March, what year? 1990.
So the recording by an F-16 aircraft of a UFO trajectory very accurately occurred in the night of 30 March 1990. But we spoke, my colleague Professor Acharois, Mr. Brennick from the University of Brussels, and myself, we spoke to that pilot at the end of January this year, when we gave a conference about UFO appearances in a small town called Welkenraad.
Yes. Yeah. And what have you discovered about the phenomenon since you started researching, being involved in it?
Oh, I didn't discover it. I must say that the biggest discovery, the trajectory of the UFO, is entirely due to 2 engineers from the Belgian Air Force. They have been instructed by the Deputy Chief of Staff of the Belgian Air Force to calculate very accurately the UFO trajectory using the data recorded by the F-16 pilot on 30 March 90. The names of those 2 engineers are Lieutenant Colonel Salmon and Lieutenant Gilmar. And the biggest work has been done, of course, by the youngest officer, Lieutenant Gilmar.
Yes.
And normally, the results of the very strange trajectory followed by the UFO should be given by those 2 engineers to the Chief of Staff of the Belgian Air Force at the beginning of April 92, so...
It doesn't come out any time?
Any time, yes.
Yes. I mean, can you tell us anything what you know of it?
I know that because I know those two young engineers, and I know what I found by calculations starting from the data recorded by the pilot, that the UFO made at one point of his trajectory a very strange motion. And during that very strange motion, the normal acceleration was, let's say, above 30 Gs. It means an acceleration which is far beyond the possibilities of human beings and human present technology.
Now, was this where it turned at right angles?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you show the diagram, if I can?
Maybe I can write the...
Right, okay, I'll just zoom out a little bit if I'm too close. Right, okay, far away.
Okay?
Yes.
So, the trajectory was, first of all, the UFO was flying almost level, and then suddenly made a 90-degree motion. At that point, where he made a 90-degree turn, that point, the normal acceleration was above 30 Gs. Climbed almost vertically, and then descended obliquely to the ground. During the oblique descent, the UFO was flying supersonic at a speed of about 900 knots, and it disappeared from the radar. The radar of the F-16 lost the UFO when the UFO was reaching almost the ground. But at that moment, the UFO was observed visually by Belgian gendarmes. It means Belgian members of the Belgian state police.
I see. Now, when it did the acceleration at about 30 Gs,
yes,
what's the maximum acceleration that a human being could withstand?
I would say about the maximum acceleration which is allowed by an F-16. And that maximum acceleration is 9 Gs. You know, some F-16 pilot find that an acceleration of 9 Gs is very painful.
Yes, yes. So, is it reasonable to assume that there couldn't have been anything living in that machine, that UFO, as we understand life?
I would say that with the present human technology, that's impossible.
Yes. Could it be that that machine was robotic, perhaps artificial intelligence, do you think?
That's possible.
It's it is within the realms of possibility.
Yes.
Tell us how all this sort of information came to come out. What is the attitude of your government and your Air Force, your Ministry of Defence on these matters?
It's not an attitude of the government, it's just an attitude of the Minister of Defence, yes, of the time where the UFO appearances started. It means in the beginning of the year 1990. The Minister of Defence at that time was Mr. E. Komen, and he very surprisingly compared with other Minister of Defence from other countries beforehand. He decided that the Belgian Air Force had to be very open and very frank speaking. And he ordered the Belgian Air Force to be very open, and they were really very open afterwards.
Yes, I found them very open myself. I mean, they put me on to you, as opposed to the British Ministry of Defence and British Air Force. Do you see a difference in attitude between your Air Force, your Ministry of Defence, and that of Great Britain and the United States of America?
Yes.
Can you be more specific?
I can be more specific because I never heard, I never saw the same attitude from the Minister of Defense from USA or from Great Britain or from France. All what is known about UFO appearances in those big countries is that, for instance, when I read the paper you give me, the relation by Milton Torres and the other American pilots, that each time ordered that the observations had to be very secret.
Yes.
And the pilot had to forget anything about what he has seen.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And that's entirely different from the attitude of the Belgian Minister of Defense,
Yes.
Mr. Giescombe, and the attitude, of course, the consequent attitude, or the subsequent attitude of the Belgian Air Force and of the Belgian pilots.
Yes. Yes. Why do you think this is, the difference in attitude between your government, your country, and Britain and America? I mean, clearly it's a marked difference in attitude.
I'm not quite sure of what I am going to say, but maybe it's because of the Minister of Defense.
This guy, this Professor David,
Yep.
he went over to the UK and was interviewed by the MOD.
Yes,
Yes.
he was sort of debriefed.
Right, and that's not in the files.
No, and he was...
So why isn't it in the files?
Yeah, right. And he didn't want Harry, when he introduced him at the start of the interview, which we haven't seen, he made it quite clear before the camera was running, he didn't want it known that he was over here to be interviewed by our own radar specialists in the MOD.
Okay, well, we'll be talking more about the liars at the MOD after this short break, David.
In May 2012, Richard D. Hall will be speaking throughout the UK and Ireland. Ticket and venue details can be found on the richplanet.net website.